All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our Cloud Cafe Milwaukee Food School program. My name is Rita. I am the Director of Events at NEWaukee, and we created this Cloud Cafe to continue our events for our network so you can continue to connect with each other and the businesses you love. And so we have this partnership with Andy from the Milwaukee Food School, and we'll be doing these live programs with her every other week for the foreseeable future, which we're really excited about. And today we have the team from Hatched. They make beautiful pastries and desserts. So I'm just going to hand it right off and they can just get going.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Rita. So this is Andy Shaka. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're super excited to have the folks from Hatched with us. They make the most delicious things, as you know, if you've had it. And if you haven't, you'll have all the opportunities to see it in action and check it out. The Milwaukee Food School is a center for learning, innovation, community building, and resource sharing. We're talking to people that grow, harvest, sell, deliver, prepare, eat, reclaim, recover, research, write about, and talk about food. Our goal is to create the space for an inspired and inclusive conversation around Milwaukee's community table. And we're just super excited to feature Allison and her husband today as they celebrate their 4th wedding anniversary. So even more reason to share some love and some pie love. I'm going to turn it over to the two of them and let them introduce themselves. And then we'll jump in with some questions and conversation before we see an incredible demo of what is likely, a really delicious galette. So Allison,
Wow,
if you
that's
could...
a lot of pressure.
No pressure, no pressure.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves, that would be great.
Sure. I'm Allison. This is Craig. As you know, we've been married now for 4 years, but we started Hatched about 2.5 years ago after we decided to move back to Milwaukee. So going back quite a bit, we're both from the Milwaukee area, but we traveled quite a bit, moved around. In the 8 years that we've been together, we lived all over Wisconsin. Craig was an organic farmer in the New Glarus area as well as in Door County. So we have quite an affinity for local foods and especially the movement to keep that as local as possible and have that throughout our business completely as well. So I don't know. What do you want to add to that?
Well, I'll just start. What led us to the organic farming chapter of our lives was my studying at the University of Milwaukee. I studied urban studies, and my main focus was feeding cities sustainably. That led me to working with Growing Power, just volunteering here and there, exploring Sweetwater when that was still in operation. But from there, I went to go work on organic farms, and Allison came along for the ride with me. And 8 years later, here we are at Hatched. But those values that we learned on the farm and preserving foods, local foods, has stayed with us throughout our 2 years at Hatched.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember actually my first experience having a Hatched pie was at a Creative Mornings event. And I think you were one of the pitch people at one of the presentations, and it was just so delicious. I know a lot of people are curious about how you come up with your flavor combinations. So obviously seasonality is important, but can you talk a little bit about sort of how you brainstorm your pie options and things like that?
Basically, my brain doesn't stop working ever. It's constantly going, and I have probably 6 to 8 whiteboards, most of which have ideas and different things, whether it's from colors that I see, other flavor combinations that I see elsewhere, seeing what's in season, also utilizing any local producers that we can. We try and utilize some of our wholesale partners as well, so bringing coffee into some of our products as well, or doing collaborations with other businesses like Cranky Owls. I have a donut pie that I make as well. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, but I could just go out to eat and I like this flavor combination. How can I put this into a pie? Or it happens to be, well, rhubarb season. What can I do that's different than just traditional strawberry rhubarb, but make it my own? And so it's always been that type of thing. I don't like to play by rules a lot of times either. I'll fit within that box, but I'll make it work for me itself. And I like to push boundaries a lot too, but keep with that classic flavor, something that's familiar and comforting for people a lot too. So
I'd say I probably test your boundaries, especially when it comes to the savory things.
Yeah.
Allison's all about the sweets.
Yeah.
She's got the sweet tooth. I've since got the sweet tooth in the last year, but I'm all about the savory options. Like right now, we're just wrapped up doing a Wisconsin brat. So we're using Johnsonville brats, onions, and sauerkraut.
And mustard. Yeah.
So it's actually kind of fun. I just give Allison all these great ideas, and she runs with them. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But, we try at least.
Yeah. It's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. Do you have favorites from your own repertoire that like you could eat all day, every day? Are there things that you make that are just sort of like high on your list?
Right now, I would say since COVID and everything else, we've been experimenting a little bit more with cereal lately. So I've been eating my fair share of cereal bars. Like we did a
Not super local, obviously,
but still delicious. We did a s'mores bar with golden grams, marshmallow, and chocolate. We did a cinnamon toast crunch, which is amazing. So I've been eating my fair share of that lately.
Sure.
I usually can stick with like anything that has a cream cheese inside of it. So like our fig and raspberry hand pie that we usually have during the winter is one of my favorites because it's a little bit tart, a little bit sweet, and kind of creamy too, which is really nice. Of our savory ones, I could always fall back on like chorizo and potato or brekkie because it's just one of those super comforting things that sometimes has a little spice to it, or it just, I want some breakfast food. I mean, we're up really early in the morning anyway, so it works out well.
So you mentioned COVID, and I'm just curious, you know, we've seen across social media, obviously, and just kind of universally, people are going to their kitchens, right? It's one of the reasons that we sort of launched the first sequence of this series in the state of quarantine. Were you surprised by how many people decided that they really wanted to bake? Or do you think that speaks to kind of like an underlying desire we have to like reconnect our hearth and, you know, some of the things that you guys get to do every day? What do you think was sort of driving some of that?
I think a lot of downtime because baking takes a lot of time. You mean to make a good pie dough, you need to make the dough and let it rest for 24 hours. I think most home bakers don't allow for that extra 24 hours. You know, they're going to make a cherry pie today. They want it for dinner tonight.
Or you're looking to cut corners and different things just to make it a little bit faster and easier. And I was really happy to see that people are getting back to baking. Obviously, that's something that I obviously have done for a very long time. And whenever I was working outside of when we owned Hatched, I would always come home and I would still be baking. You know, that's one of the reasons why I started Hatched. That I would work for 8-10 hours a day and I'd still come home and then bake for another 6 hours. That was my comfort, my release. And it's also one of those things that it brings you back to a time of like nostalgia and being with your family, whether it was baking with your mom or your grandma, or like I would work in the garden with my dad and he taught me knife skills when I was 6. So I can completely understand how it's a very comforting thing to people to get back to that. But then it's also one of those things that makes a little bit more sense because you're also saving money at the same time, that you're not spending money going out to eat.
Right.
You're taking a little more time in what you do and understanding what's going into a meal as well, have a little bit more appreciation for all of it. So
yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that Jennifer Bortolotta said when we were hosting one of the Cooking with Mrs. B segments is that she's definitely not a baker, right? Because that requires a certain amount of precision and there's measurements. It's not like you can do a little of this and a little of that because the chemistry is so critical, right, to the things that happen with baking. So what advice would you give to people who really want to start baking and dive in and, you know, get over that hump or get past that fear and that feeling of being intimidated by, you know, baking rather than just kind of throwing things together in a pot and seeing what happens?
Right. Well, from a very young age. My dad is a chemistry teacher, and so I always loved all of the precision of baking. I also liked knowing exactly how you put something together and you know that it's going to come out, depending on if you actually followed the rules.
Right.
What's nice though with baking is that once you figure out what those base rules are, find a solid recipe, a muffin recipe, a scone recipe, whatever it is, and then you can start playing with it. You can throw in whatever you want. What I'm going to demo today is a strawberry rhubarb galette, where it's one of those things that pretty much you have some Kaido and throw anything else you want inside of it. And basically you just need a little bit of a thickener somewhere. You don't necessarily even need that if you don't want to. Put it in, fold up the dough, and you're good to go. And it's one of those, especially with galettes and pies, that you don't always need that exact precision unless you want the exact same result every single time. It's kind of nice to see that it's not always going to come out the same. I am very much a perfectionist, so it's kind of funny for me to be okay with that, but it's really helped me shift from needing everything to be exactly the same all the time because I can't control it. Even when I put stuff in the oven, it's not always going to come out exactly the same, whether there's humidity in the air, the oven's running hot, somebody was opening the door 5-7 times, whatever it may be. It's more being okay with it's not going to be exactly the same. And that's okay. But I think the biggest thing with any of these, if you're more of a savory cook, but you want to bake, you want something sweet, find a base recipe. And it's really easy because then you can just throw in some fruit, whether it's in season, change up savory, pull out some of the sugar. It's a lot of fun that way. But I mean, that's pretty much how I've done a lot of our things here too.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I would say my only advice,
He's not a baker.
I'm not a baker. Allison's taught me everything that I know. But it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. If, try again tomorrow. It's not the end of the world. Maybe it's not Instagram worthy or Facebook worthy, but who cares? Enjoy it, try again, and keep trying.
Enjoy the process.
Don't give up.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I think what we might do, if it's okay with both of you, is we'll turn over to the cooking part now. I want to make sure we focus on that. And then I'll invite those who are watching on Facebook and Zoom. If you have questions, we can certainly ask those after we get through some of the delicious process pieces. And you can post those to the chat or in the Facebook stream. And we'll come back to both of you with a few more questions after we get down to business in the kitchen.
Sounds good. I'm just going to move the camera.
Sounds great. Thank you. If you're just joining us, we are with the team at Hatched, and we are about to learn how to make a strawberry rhubarb galette. I see you've got mise en place there.
Yes, just a little bit.
If you're having any questions that you want asked, please put them in the chat or in the Facebook stream. We'll get to those in a little bit. But now I'm going to mute my mic and let Allison take us through her process.
Sounds good. It's now reminding me of being back in school and having to watch demos. And I have to remember what I'm doing. So, the galette, if you're familiar with, if you're not, doesn't really matter. It's okay. So I have just some Kaido that we've cut out into 9-inch rounds. You can use any size you want. The recipe that I've used will actually make 2 of these. So I'm going to put 2 together for you. A galette is traditionally a rustic pie. It's freeform, so you can fold it up, and it's okay if it opens up on itself. That's okay. Not a big deal. Super tasty still. So what I have, I'm going to set those off to the side. I've got my bowl. I have a pound of chopped rhubarb. Fresh or frozen works. I have 12 ounces of strawberries. I like to use more rhubarb than strawberries. I like that tart bite to it. Particularly orange and custard. So I've got those in there. I've also got a little bit of orange juice, which pairs really nicely with the tart rhubarb, brings out some nice flavors in that. With rhubarb, you especially want to have a little bit more sugar, but because we have strawberries in there and a little added orange juice. I've cut back on the sugar. That's something that my pies in general, we use a lot less sugar than traditionally. I like all of the flavors of the fruit that we're using to really shine through. So you can taste those. And then I also have two different thickeners here. I use tapioca as well as cornstarch. Cornstarch uses more of the binder, the glue of everything, and then tapioca gives it a better texture. It doesn't create a grainy texture. It's a much more smooth and viscous texture. I'll toss that in there. And then I always use zest in everything that I do. It adds a nice pop of flavor to it just because of the oils that are within the skin of any of the fruits. So for this batch size, I'm only going to use about a quarter of this orange. All right. With my hands, I'm just going to mix everything together. And I'm going to mix until all of those dry ingredients have been moistened. You don't see any big white parts anymore. You want to make sure that everything starts to come together, fully incorporated. Like I said, galettes are super easy. They take very little time to come together. So if you want a nice little sweet treat at the end of the day, they're also nice that you can prep ahead of time and freeze completely and pull out when you want one. So if you want to save some of that rhubarb for winter months, this is a great way to do that too. I'm going to change out my gloves real quick. All right. So what I like to do, because these are a little bit bigger, I'll actually form them on the pan that I'm going to bake on. With this, we actually chill our dough with all the filling in it for about 30 minutes to overnight. You can freeze it completely. I like to bake them from frozen. It keeps everything a little more stable. So I've got my egg wash. It's usually about 1 egg to 1 to 2 tablespoons of water. I'm just going around the edges. I don't have to get in the middle since I'm going to place some fruit there. I'm going to divide what I have here evenly between our 2 doughs. And it's okay to get a little messy. I'm going to pop that in there, and it's going to look like a crazy lot of filling in there, and that's okay. As it bakes, it's going to condense quite a bit. I'm going to get as much in there as I can right now. And then I'm going to start folding the dough into it, and then you can always place those extra little bits on top. So, all right. So now, Craig, do you want to show how I'm going to do this? I'll bring the iPad over. So when I actually start folding it in, I'm going to fold it over, and we're going to just create a little package that keeps the top open, but kind of keeps everything contained inside. And then we'll give it a little squeeze. Get that all together. So you see that one's all together. We'll do the next one. Give that one a little squeeze. I just like to do that just to ensure that everything has been pinched together. We don't have anything hopefully opening too much. Not a big deal if it does. I still have a little bit of my filling left in here, so I'm going to pop some of those extra pieces back on here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop these in the freezer. And then I have some other ones that I've already baked ahead of time, so you can see what they look like when they're done. So these, normally I would freeze for at least 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Helps keep everything together. So I'll pop those in there. And then, got a couple that I baked earlier that you can see. they started out the same size as all of the rest of them. So you can see that all of that has fully condensed in there. So it's okay if you pack it full. But then you can see beautiful, it has kept its shape. It's not oozing anywhere, which is really nice. And these are great because you can also then pop this on the grill and just to warm it up a little bit with any meal, or then pop some ice cream on top, custard, or maybe some heavy cream, which is really tasty too. So that's our strawberry rhubarb bullet.
It looks so good. We've got a couple of questions from some folks in the chat. We will share the recipe out with viewers so that they can make this at home. But a few of the questions were around the idea of using this with frozen rhubarb, right? Like if you have rhubarb now and you freeze it later, you can always make it with the frozen rhubarb later. Do you need to thaw the rhubarb first, or do you bake it frozen?
I would bake it frozen. Ideally, I like to have a little bit of moisture in there just to help keep any of the thickener that you're using, whether it's flour, cornstarch, whatever it may be, helps create that sauce on it, basically. You don't want it to fully thaw, otherwise you're going to have a soupy mess and it is going to ooze everywhere, and you don't want to have any burnt pie filling anywhere. So definitely frozen, keep it frozen.
Okay, great. And then if someone were to be making that dough and they tore the dough or weren't quite as tender with it, is it fine to just pinch it back together? It's a forgiving dough?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Pie dough, unless you're just going to really be terrible to it and overwork it like a crazy amount, it is one of the most forgiving doughs. And it really depends on what recipe you're using too. We tend to use one that's closer to like a puff pastry. So we get lots of really flaky bits in there. But a lot of pie doughs, it's okay if it's almost like a cookie dough consistency, not going to be as wet as that by any means, but it's going to be a little more formed together. And those by far are way more forgiving. So anything that would be store-bought, for sure, you can definitely pinch it back to it. I do that too, so no big deal.
And then I know that you cook with lard, right? Like that's one of the things that you do. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to do that for folks who might be curious?
I'm a crazy person. No. Well, some of it has come from our experiences of working on farms and being a little more sustainable in what we do. And I know a lot of people have issues with different uses of fats and things of that nature. I chose to use lard because my husband was a hog farmer. And so we saw all of these pigs that it was part of the farm that they were slaughtered. That was how it worked. But I wanted to make sure that if they were going to go through that process, that we actually use every aspect of the animal possible. So that includes all of the lard too. I also chose to use lard because it's a much more vintage way of baking. Oh, sorry, I just saw a question pop up. I got distracted, my bad. Sorry, I'm not used to this. But I use lard because of the vintage way of cooking, going back to roots. My family didn't necessarily use lard. I actually grew up with shortening in Kaido. But I find that the combination of butter and lard in our dough creates a flakier crust and much more flavorful dough for sure. But I do make vegetarian dough by request. I just don't generally have it on our menu. So
thank you for explaining that. There's another question about the dough, and that is, did you say that you let it sit for hours before using it, that you chill it? I know you said to freeze the galettes before you cook them, but what do you typically do with your dough? Are you making it in the morning and then using it later that day, or how many hours do you recommend letting it sort of do its thing without disturbing it?
Right. So if anyone is familiar with making bread or pie dough in general, or even cookies for that matter, a lot of times when you use anything that has water and gluten, you want to let it sit so that the flour itself, all those gluten proteins, can actually start absorbing that water and relax a little bit. So when we make our pie dough, we make pie dough on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I have somebody that makes hundreds and hundreds of pounds for us. And then it gets rolled on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So we do a full 24-hour rest, and a lot of that just is because of scheduling. But personally at home, if I was making dough just myself, I would let it sit for at least 6 to 8 hours. It's going to be much easier to work with as well. It's not going to crumble as much. You let everything just chill. A big thing with baking, which is hard sometimes, is the amount of patience that you need. It takes time and a lot of patience. Not opening oven doors, letting stuff sit in the fridge. So it's a waiting game, but it's definitely worth the waiting for sure.
And just to be clear, the resting is in a refrigerated environment or in a okay.
Yeah. So once we make our dough, we pop it in the fridge for that 6 to 8 hours or up to 24. Dough also freezes really, really well. So whenever you want to go and use it, just make sure that you pull it out 24 hours in advance and leave it in the fridge overnight. And then when you're ready to roll, it's best if you let it sit for maybe 5-10 minutes. It's going to allow it to come to room temperature a little bit so that it's not going to be as hard to roll for sure.
Okay, thanks. There's another question here, and you mentioned that the demo video made you feel a little bit like you were watching videos in school. Someone was curious about your schooling and your background. Yeah,
I have a very interesting school background. My mom's sitting over there laughing at me right now. She works in my kitchen. So I started school for something that was culinary arts and food science in one program, hence all the chemistry and everything that goes into it. I decided to not finish that program. I ended up moving to Australia for a year for a gap year program, not gap year program, but just a gap year. I was an au pair down there. But everything that I've done, I've always been baking. Everything, whether it's for people, for a job, whatever it may be. So I started school for culinary arts, and then I actually finished with education and music performance. So I have a very wide array of skills that I bring to the table. But the one common thread has always just been the creativity of everything. That I like the artistry in whatever I do. So though my schooling isn't very traditional by any means, and I didn't finish with a culinary degree, I've always been in food since I was 14. My first job was at a bakery in a grocery store. And so it never stopped. I continued educating myself as well. All of my books have always been about food, whether it was about chefs or food science or just cookbooks in general. My mom and my husband are both sitting there smiling because they know this very much so. So yeah, my schooling's a bit different, but I always had that common thread of food somewhere.
So what advice would you have for someone who's really interested in following a similar path? Like they want to bring their creative impulses into the kitchen, or, you know, they really just love doing it and they'd like to get more involved. Do you have some good sort of starter resources that you might recommend to the aspiring baker?
Yeah. So the way that I started and have always been, I would bake for friends and family, and I would ask for feedback. And I would just keep going. If I wanted to do something, I would bake it and pass out treats to people. And how Hatched actually started, I just started baking. We had just moved back to Milwaukee, and I was working full time, but I would come home and make treats and I'd throw it up on Facebook. And then it was friends of friends that were willing to try things. And I sent out postcards asking for feedback, and it was all anonymous. So I didn't know who was responding to anything, but that way I knew this is a popular flavor. This isn't a popular flavor. It's one of those things that I learned a lot about. Just because I like something doesn't mean somebody else is going to like it. And as much as I want people to like what I do, I still want to do things that people will want and like. I've always been a caregiver too, so following what people have led with, to listening to people, understanding that there's ties to either family recipes or just the community of Milwaukee, of like, okay, there's not necessarily like a love of avocados and seafood and things of that nature. And there's plenty of people here that love that, but it's much more of the cheese and brats and beer, and it doesn't have to be just that, but knowing that there is certain ties to everything. So if people are interested in baking, by all means, be creative, get out there, but also listen to people, see what they're interested in, and try and put things together that bring a little bit of familiarity, but also some nuances at the same time. That's what I've tried to do in everything that I do.
So that brings me to another question. What is the biggest surprise in terms of flavor profiles or combinations that you experimented with and you're like, oh, wow, this is really great, but you weren't sure going in if it was going to turn out, you know, to please the palate in the way that you hoped it might?
Our most popular flavor, actually, our blueberry lemon curd. It was one of those things that I loved it. I loved the flavor profile. I grew up being the girl that loved lemon meringue pie, and I'd rip the meringue off and toss it aside and just eat the lemon on the inside because I loved everything tart. And then I topped that blueberry lemon curd with lavender icing. I never expected that pie to be the one that outshone everything. I can't take that one off the menu. I've had people get mad at me when I try to, which is funny. I just never expected that particular flavor to be the end all for everybody, which is great. I mean, I'm super happy about it, but it was never one of those that I was like, yeah, blueberry lemon curd gonna be the thing that brings everybody to Hatched. No, well, I never thought that.
You're getting affirmation in the chats. Deanna said, oh my God, blueberry lemon curd is so good. And so is the blueberry basil. So it might have to stay in your menu for some time, right?
Yeah.
So you know, when you think about how you've grown your business, and obviously it's a completely different structure, and we could actually have a whole show on this, right? Working with your spouse and building a business with your spouse. And I think we should probably revisit that. But are there big pivots and changes that you've had to make during this quarantine process, or anything that, you know, really surprised you about your business model? Just given that, you know, the world has really changed. How has that impacted you? Or
the whole COVID thing has been very interesting for us. It actually all started right at Pi Day, which was really difficult for us. Because obviously Pi Day and Thanksgiving are very, very big in pie world.
Pi Day is March 14th, which was a Saturday.
And everything shut down then on St. Patrick's Day on 3/17. So it was one of those things that when it all started, we had no idea how to go about stuff. So going back, we have a very different model for our business. We've never been a traditional business. Like I said before, I follow rules, but I make them work for me.
So I think what should be said is that we don't have a retail location. We are really dependent on large crowds of people, like farmers markets. And we do great during the summer months, during all the events. Winter, we were fortunate enough to be welcomed to the winter farmers market, which unfortunately closed for the rest of the year, rightfully so. And we since then had to pivot from there. And we could have went either one or two ways. We could either try, or we could just stop completely. And we just put ourselves out there and said, call us if you want something. And the phones kept ringing.
That's awesome.
We were also fortunate enough too, since COVID, that we've had a few holidays, which we do well for holidays and special events. So we've had Pi Day, which was good here. We had Easter, and we had Mother's Day. And somehow Mother's Day was our second largest holiday, next to Thanksgiving last year.
We don't know how that happened.
I don't know,
to be honest.
Yeah.
it was just one of those things that with the way that we set up our business initially, we had an easy transition into how businesses had to adapt to everything. So initially, we were the kids that I knew that I wanted to make sure that if our pie was going in a package, I not only wanted the pie to be beautiful, but I wanted the package to be beautiful. I wanted all aspects of however our product was presented to be perfect as best as I could make it. And so from day one, we've always packaged everything that we make individually. We've also packaged everything that we make in paper. And that's been a big thing for us as well, that the sustainability factor of all of that, so that anything that we use, since we use a lot of packaging, can also be recycled, that it's not going to be just completely wasteful. So for us moving into this COVID world, yeah, it was different that we now had to bring all of these customers to our kitchen, but at least we didn't need to change how we presented everything. So we're very thankful that we were already doing things in a way that we just had to change how people got our product rather than how we presented it, which is really nice. It also helped us figure out how people wanted to come to us. So if we ever set up a resale location, I'm not fearful that people would come visit us, because we are in a basement with very little marking at all, and we have people come to us. So I'm quite thankful that we were able to keep that going.
Yeah.
And we don't give up. I wasn't going to let it happen either. So yeah, it's just been very interesting that our business from day one has kind of been set up for that COVID world, which is a weird thing to say.
And we are also, I call ourselves weekend warriors. I mean, we do prep starting Monday through Friday, and we take our product to market on Saturday. So we bring a lot of product. Since COVID and everything, we now only take orders for Sunday pickup only. So it's still, it's a treat. We sell bakery and pastries. It's definitely a treat, and people are treating themselves right now.
You don't want to see me the rest of the week, I promise.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think
people, go ahead.
just having the 1 day a week has really helped us, instead of having maybe 2 or 3 orders or something on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but by pushing everything to 1 day allows us to streamline our processes.
And it makes it special. That's
special.
always been what we've been about, is making everything special. So.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think it's a testament to your business model and the quality of your product, and also just your energy around, making sure that people feel good and have a full, complete sensory experience, right? Like you're saying, the visuals are there, the smells, the tastes, the tactile experience of holding the paper. I think the other thing that it speaks to is that Milwaukee is a very food connected community, and we're also a community that believes strongly in lifting up our own, right? And so if you think about ways that we could be more inclusive, or create more food system solidarity, or support small businesses like yours that are feeding us at times where, we feel that treat is the thing that keeps us going maybe, or it's, just something that we really enjoy and love and want to celebrate. With all of your experience and kind of how you look at this big picture, what are some things that you think that the viewing audience could do to get more engaged in food system work, or to support businesses like yours better? How can we rally to kind of bring things, together in terms of a more inclusive, but also a more connected community through food?
Right.
Well, since we don't have a retail location, we do quite a bit of wholesale business to other small coffee shops around town. A lot of coffee shops. We're at Venture Brew Co. over in Washington Heights. We're at Valentine in Tosa and in Oak Creek. And they just came on right as COVID hit, and they've been a great customer for us since. And we've also are at downtown over at Canary right now, Birch and Butcher as well. So we always helping our fellow wholesale partners to, attract more business. We always promote them using our social media and stuff like that, just to help keep more foot traffic in their doors as well too.
We've always been more about the collaboration, cooperation aspect of everything rather than we're in competition with one another. We are just one little business, and we're very thankful that people are willing to purchase from us, but we also know that we can't provide everything that everyone wants. And so if I can't make something, or we don't offer it on the menu, or we aren't available someday, we will gladly give you suggestions of places to go. It's one of those things that it's not necessarily all about us, but rather like building up our surrounding community and food people that we love like so very much. We want to highlight as many people throughout the city as we possibly can. It's also interesting for us because the majority of our business is within Milwaukee County, yet our kitchen is based in Brookfield. We've been fortunate that we can still have that impact on more of the city community rather than just the suburban community. The reach that we've been able to have and have a voice throughout all of it has been quite a blessing, and we just want to keep that collaboration aspect and work with other people as much as we can since we are so little. So yeah.
Also, now that the farmers markets are in full swing now in Tosa and Brookfield, we're at those markets. Shorewood, hopefully, fingers crossed, couple weeks, but I'll go there and I'll buy produce for the week for our kitchen. I'll buy peaches and I'll buy berries for everyone
honey
too.
And maple
honey
syrup.
And maple syrup as well too. So we continue to do that, and that's something we've always done since the beginning. And I think a lot of it comes back to my days on the farm. I know how hard everyone works out in those fields for those strawberries and those peaches and everything else. That's a lot of work. I get it. So
we have cultivated too many fields.
Yeah. So, and I don't think that'll ever change with us either.
Yeah. It's just so beautiful to hear you talk about like your vision and how it all fits together and the process that's brought you this far. And, I can tell, I knew this already, but I can also tell, and I'm sure all the viewers can tell, that you really do approach everything with a spirit of, love and empathy and compassion and wanting to contribute to your community. I can't thank you enough for joining us today. The only thing that could make it more perfect is if we could all eat that galette together, right?
We're available this weekend.
Excellent. That's what I was going to ask you. So in closing, please just, share with us whatever you're most excited about with the upcoming season, and make sure to let us know where we can get your pies.
Yeah. So we are most excited about the fact that peach season is coming, blueberry season is coming. We have all of these awesome opportunities within our farmers markets, local shops, everything. That Wisconsin's an interesting place that our summer season is so short, but we thrive on everything that pops up so quickly. So we like to jump on it as much as possible. So we are super excited about being able to support more of our local vendors at any of the farmers markets. We cannot wait to get our peach delivery. We go through hundreds and hundreds of pounds of them. So everybody be ready for that. With that being said, though, we still are at markets. We are still doing our Sunday drive-through bakery. So you don't even have to get out of your car. You can just come here, drive down, grab some food, and it's really fun. So our Sunday drive-through bakery is the only way to pre-order for any of our products. Our markets, we aren't able to accommodate any pre-orders. So if you just want to stop by, you can visit us at Tosa Farmers Market from 8 to noon in the Tosa Village on Saturdays. And then the Brookfield Farmers Market, they moved to Brookfield Central High School. It's a big, wide open space. It's really great. And they're on Saturdays from 7:30 to noon. Hopefully Shorewood's going to get up and rolling pretty soon, but they're looking for a new location for the market. So we'll keep you updated on that. And then our Sunday drive-through bakery. If you're interested in pre-ordering, we do have everything available online. Our orders run Tuesday through Friday. They do close at midnight on Friday. But if you can't get an order in, you can always stop by on Sunday morning between 10 and 1. And we always have plenty of extra goodies, from cinnamon rolls and hand patties to cereal bars, which he loves. And we also do frozen savory hand pies now too, which is really fun, that you don't have to have everything baked. You can take it home and bake it yourself at your own convenience. So
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can't wait to have you back. We are getting requests for cooking classes. So
I saw that.
yeah, we'll have to talk about that. Yeah, we can get some online classes on the MKE Food School, and in-person classes in the kitchen when people can get back together again. But you just made our day. Thank you so much. What are you going to do to celebrate your anniversary?
We'll probably have a full day of work.
Full day of work.
Yeah.
Finishing our Father's Day orders and things of that nature. We take Mondays off now, which is really nice. We've grown so big that we actually have staff that will keep everything going so that we can escape the kitchen on Monday. So we're probably going to go visit all of our favorite restaurants on Monday, do all that curbside stuff. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it's the entrepreneur's life, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Mondays.
Yeah, Mondays.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us today. Thanks to everyone who watched on Facebook and on Zoom. We'll follow up with some recipe, PDFs. We can post those and share that with folks. But it's been so fun to watch you work and hear your philosophy and learn from you today. I can't thank you enough for joining us. And then I'm just going to turn it back over to Rita just to close it out and give us some final words about NEWaukee, and we will see you at the MKE Food School in 2 weeks. And Craig and Allison, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be doing this every other week with Andy and the MKE Food School with different local chefs, which we're really excited for. We also have a lot of other Cloud Cafe programming happening every week. If you want to learn where you can see more about that, you can sign up for our newsletter on NEWaukee.com. And big thanks to our sponsor on these Cloud Cafe events. We have Ginger Lazovik from Shorewest Realty, as well as North Shore Bank. So thank you to our sponsors to help keep our programming alive throughout these times. All right, everyone, have a nice Thursday, and we'll see you soon.